All right, listeners, apologies in advance because we are recording this as my heating is turning on. So you might hear some tapping in the background because I do live in a pre war building. But before we begin, I have to voice a concern about our theme.
Oh, oh, okay.
Oh. Yes, I know this is supposed to be our year end roundup, but I was thinking, in solidarity with our friends in the regenerative ag community, we might call it our year end recap because, we're phasing out Roundup.
Oh, it's a glyphosate joke. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna edit in some cheers for that one.
All right, dear listeners, we are at the end of the year. So instead of bringing you the week's news, we thought we would recap what happened in the wine world in 2023 and try our hand at predicting what we might see in 2024. But since Ruby has declared it so, this is not a roundup. It is a rundown. It is a summary. It's a synopsis.
It's a wrap up, a digest.
An encapsulation, a recapitulation.
Yes, indeed. And I'm Catherine Cole, joined by Nick Toole and Ruby Welkovich, and this is The Foretop. So, our first news story we're going to encapsulate is, I guess it's more of a theme. It's the theme of young people and why they are not drinking wine. This kind of started in January when former guest of the pod, Rob McMillan of Silicon Valley Bank, released his annual State of the U.S. Wine Industry report. And then Eric Asimov followed up in February in an article in the New York Times that encapsulated what Rob said. And the message that kind of freaked everyone out was how disengaged Gen Z and millennials are with wine. So they're not drinking wine. This is a problem. Ruby and Nick, what generation are you? Tell us what generation you are and what your thoughts are. Why are young people not drinking wine?
Hi, I'm Nick Toole, and I'm a millennial. So Rob notes that if you want to bring in more millennial drinkers and Gen Z drinkers, wineries need to be more clear about their social values and what they're doing to address climate change. And that should be on the website. It should be on the label. Clearly messaged. And I totally agree with that. That's how I buy beer and wine.
Hmm.
But wineries have to do it in a way that differentiates themselves from other wineries, obviously, and in a way that makes consumers feel good about how they're spending. So, an example of that might be something like, for every bottle sold, we donate 10 cents to a local water restoration project. So then, the person's like, oh, I can see what they're doing for the environment, and I'm going to help them do that by purchasing this wine.
Yeah, I love that. I love when companies give back. It's like the Tom's method. I'm Ruby. I'm a zillennial, even though Nick and I are the same age.
A zillennial. I love that
A
word.
zillennial, yes, somewhere right in the middle. um, yeah, I think that doing good is great. I think that for me, what stops me from ordering wine as opposed to something else is I just prefer flavor forward beverages. Actually, Erica Ducey and Felicity Carter have an entire podcast season of their podcast, The Business of Drinks, about this. Where have the millennials gone? So I definitely recommend checking that out.
Now, wait a minute. I want to get back to what you said about flavor forward, because obviously, those of us who are in the wine industry, we think we have a flavor forward
Yeah,
product.
those
Oh
those are
no.
fighting
But
words.
I do remember you recommending non-alcoholic beverages in the past, Ruby. And so I wanted to dig into this. Maybe you're just talking about kind of different flavors. And I did note as we were researching this episode that according to a report from fact.mr, actually, Nick, you found this article in Wine Business, sales of non-alcoholic beverages are predicted to grow 6.7% every year for the next decade. That's non-alcoholic beverages, and they reference reasons like clean label trends, popularity of plant-based diets, better understanding of the harms of alcohol consumption, and shifting consumer preferences. So consumer preferences, flavor, talk to us, Ruby, talk to us.
Yeah, it's funny. As a teenager, I would tell my family friends at parties, you don't need alcohol to have fun. And they used to tease me relentlessly for that. But I think I might just have been ahead of my time because this is clearly a trend. And I'm seeing this upward trend of non alc brands like Seedlip, Gia, the wine brand Non that I mentioned last or a few weeks back, as my dessert course. But I do have to say, as a young person living in the city, people are drinking. I think we're just looking towards more fun, unique cocktails that are really flavor forward. So last weekend, I ordered a drink. It was blackberry jalapeno tequila cocktail, and it was just like good. I don't know how else to describe it. And I think most millennials or zillennials or Gen Z were just disappointed when you try a wine that says it has notes of raspberry, but there aren't any actual raspberry flavors in the wine. And that's where I come from with it.
Now this is interesting because Rob McMillan in his report also suggested that producers start listing their ingredients and offering nutritional data like calories per serving. And of course, Martin Reyes, Master of Wine, discussed this very topic with me in episode 130 of the Four Top. It sounds like saying in your tasting notes on your back label that there's blackberry or raspberry in the wine should be replaced by actually listing the ingredients in the wine.
I think the whole nutritional labeling thing for me is a bit weird because I pay a lot of attention to nutrition. I try to eat well, but when it comes to drinking alcohol, I actively avoid looking at the calorie content or even like the ingredients because it kind of takes away from the pleasure of it. It's like this is my indulgence and I don't need to know the impact of it.
Interesting. So we're still kind of unresolved on this in terms of what we will be seeing in 2024. It sounds like more NA beverages, more transparency from the wine industry is what we need to see. And also, I want to circle back and say I checked in with Rob McMillan actually last night, and he will be releasing another State of the U.S. Wine Industry report that will drop January 18th. So we will keep an eye out for that. So, speaking of Silicon Valley Bank, let's talk about business this past year. The biggest story of the year by far was the failure of our two biggest banks, Silicon Valley Bank and First Republic. When I say our two biggest banks, I mean the two biggest banks serving the US wine industry. Now, if you were living off the grid for the first half of this year, JP Morgan Chase now owns First Republic, and First Citizens Bank now owns Silicon Valley Bank. So everything really got shook up. There was definitely a chill running through the wine industry for the first half of the year. I think it's still kind of shaky. I'm also hearing from my colleagues, my clients, my friends that there was a euphoria in 2022. Everything looked really great because the pandemic was over and tasting rooms reopened, tourism spiked, and that was followed by a pretty dead 2023. I've been hearing that a lot of tasting rooms were much emptier this past year as those who spent their pandemic savings on vacations in 2022 stayed home.
So Gen Zers, millennials, and everyone else is not drinking wine.
And the banks almost went under. And.
Oh, God.
And it didn't help that the World Health Organization declared at the beginning of the year, just to cut the knees out from under everyone, they declared that no level of alcohol consumption is safe for our health. So we'll be tackling that actually in I think our next episode, but that's not helpful.
Okay, so that was 2023. Let's think about 2024. Let's think positive thoughts. What is working? I always like to look at the kind of the large wine companies and corporations because they usually have their finger on the pulse, just kind of see what they're doing. Companies like Gallo, Trinchero, Constellation. And one thing I've really kind of enjoyed watching in 2023 is what Gallo has been doing. They have a couple of interesting things going on. They have a import firm called Maze-Row, M-A-Z-E. That's Maze-Row. Check it out if you haven't seen their website. It's this kind of artisanal importer vibe. They've got a great Italian book, but it's also accompanied by, editorial articles and kind of cultural curation. I don't know how else to describe it. And they acquired some really interesting brands, including our friend Randall Graham's brand, The Language of Yes. And then Gallo acquired Massican, that's another friend of the pod, Dan Petrosky's brand, in September. And of course, Massican is definitely not just a wine brand, but a lifestyle brand. So I'm kind of curious, Nick and Ruby, does this kind of appeal to you? A brand that's not just wine, but a whole way of thinking, a whole way of being.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think that lifestyle brands are huge right now. I mean, you have Kourtney Kardashian's Poosh, you have Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop. You know, Molly Baz now has her own wine label that really matches with her aesthetic and her cookbooks as well. So I think that lifestyle brands are really big right now.
Do they have to have like a double O sound to be successful?
Definitely.
But getting back to wine and, looking at Massican and Maze Row and their branding and all that, they definitely very much resonate with people's identity and lifestyle. So kind of getting back to what we were talking about in our last segment, telling a story right down to that Massican blue, if you're familiar with the brand. Dan Petrosky traveled all the way to Italy, saw this like 1500-year-old fresco, and it had this very distinct, unique blue in it. And he was like, "That's the blue. That's my blue."
Hmm.
And that inspired that Massican blue that you see now, and it's a gorgeous color.
Oh, I love that.
Interesting. I love what I'm hearing because I'm all about storytelling.
So, a top 10 wine term from the past few years is regenerative agriculture, and it will continue to be a top 10 wine term because winemakers and wine buyers alike care more and more about how their wine is made. And we keep coming back to it. But if you go back to that Rob McMillan report, younger drinkers want to know, that their beverages are made with intention and made with the environment in mind. And regenerative agriculture is all about no-till or low-till, as some people term it, limiting the use of herbicides and pesticides, soil health, and all that stuff. And I think that really resonates with people. And that's why regenerative agriculture has been a big thing in 2023 and will continue to be a big thing.
Yeah, I think the biggest regenerative ag story of 2023, at least in the US, was Napa Green's announcement this fall that they're requiring wineries to phase out glyphosate by 2026.
Oh, that wasn't just a regenerative ag story. That was a huge just viticulture story. I mean, that was a showstopper when that announcement came out. And it's Napa Green is requiring that their members phase out all synthetic herbicides by 2028. This is really big news.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are applauding this, but some people are also nervous. And, regenerative ag is not, there isn't like a set definition necessarily. So there are people that are big into regenerative ag, but still say, glyphosate is necessary, or at least it's a bridge to better practices in the future. And it's cheap and effective, and it can be a lifesaver. So I think, you know, a lot of people are happy about this. A lot of people were not so happy about this. It kind of comes down to your philosophy almost. And I think, a lot of people do note that it's not great for soil health and biodiversity. And there is the whole discussion around like, does it have a negative effect on human health?
Yeah, Bayer AG, who makes it, has lost billions because of a bunch of different court cases that hinged on its impact on human health.
Okay, so we have been hearing a lot about glyphosate. We've been talking a lot about glyphosate. Nick, bring us home here. What's the takeaway?
Well, regenerative ag is in. Obviously, as I said, the definition is different for different people, but it is in. And glyphosate is, I think, starting to be on its way out.
So, for our fourth news theme of the year, maybe I'll say this is our combo dessert course because this is just light and puffy and fun. What's going on in pop culture, Ruby? What's going on in the TV world as relates to wine?
Well, I just discovered recently that there's this whole genre of those cheesy Hallmark holiday movies specifically related to wine. So one of them is called A Christmas Vintage. Another is called A Vineyard Christmas, which I actually did some research on and found out that the original title is The Most Wonderful Time of the Year.
Oh,
Um,
no.
yeah, it's pretty cheesy, and maybe we'll share some images because it is exactly what you think it is.
So bad, so bad. It's good. Shout out to our friend Kristen Castagna who alerted us to this genre, this budding genre of cheesy Christmas wine movies.
Tannin TV.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to mention that Drops of God, the manga series about wine, is now a show. I did not watch it though. I think it's on Apple TV. I don't even know. Because I have to admit, I love shows that are, imported from other countries, but I do watch them dubbed because I like to multitask while I watch things. And Nick, there's a term for this, right?
Yeah, like, dubbed not subbed or subbed not dubbed. People have different takes on which one they prefer.
So, listeners, if you watched Drops of God, please let me know. Did you like it? Should I watch it? Should I sit down and watch the subtitles? I'm curious. I thought the manga series was amazing. So,
Yeah, I think I'm going to check it out next week in between Christmas and New Year's.
All right, so to close out, a fond farewell to the many folks who've contributed so much to the wine industry and went to wine heaven this year. I just want to mention three, actually. Mike Gergich made it to 100. Nick, tell us about Mike Gergich.
Mike Gergich, he is the famous winemaker behind that 1973 Chateau Montelena Chardonnay that won or beat out several of those white Burgundy wines in the wine tasting event that was dubbed the Judgment of Paris in 1976, I believe.
Yeah, and Ruby, we lost a Willamette Valley icon as well.
Yes, Dick Erath, Pinot Pioneer.
And Dorothy Chelichev, widow of the famous winemaker Andrei Chelichev, passed away at 99 in late November. And I just wanted to, as an aside, say that I hear from many women in the wine industry that all these famous male winemakers of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there was always a woman working her tail off right beside him. So Dorothy Chelichev, I see you and I salute you. Well, this has been the Four Top Podcast. I am our executive producer, Catherine Cole.
I'm our producer, Nick Toole.
I'm media and design manager, Ruby Welkovich.
Keelan King is our sound supervisor and the composer and performer of our fantastic theme music. Please visit our website, thefourtop.org, to learn more about us, listen to back episodes, and purchase books written by our amazing panelists. If you have not already subscribed to The Four Top on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever your favorite podcast platform is, please do so and leave us a rating.
Y'all, this part is important because every rating feeds the algorithm and helps new listeners find The Four Top.
Yes. Well, from the high-fiber, protein-packed city of Portland, Oregon, in the beautiful Willamette Valley, this is Catherine Cole, signing out.
And from the pizza capital of America, this is Ruby signing out.
From the unseasonably warm city of Portland, Maine, this is Nick signing out. Stay safe out there, and thank you for listening.